Hi, my name is Victoria Roten,
And I'm Michael Jones.
and we are here with our second episode of our mental health podcast. And our topic today and going forward is the necessity of having connection in order to avoid struggling with addictions. And most of us think of food, shelter, and clothing as the necessities for getting by in this culture. But I would add that really being able to connect with ourselves and share that authentic self with other people is another necessity of in order to have a positive, enjoyable life. And when we don't have that, most of us are in a lot of pain and will need some way of ameliorating that pain, and usually that is some type of addiction.
And so before we get into the meat of today's topic, we want to remind you guys that we are new at this and there are going to be some technical hiccups, little tiny mistakes, but as we illuminated in our first episode, anything worth doing is worth doing shitty. But our goal is to continually learn the equipment and get better so we can bring you guys more engrossing content without you having to focus on the technical aspects.
And just a tad more on the philosophy of if it's worth doing shitty. Many people with addictions have this sense that they have to be perfect or that they already need to know what it is, how to do what it is they're trying to do. And for me, perfectionism was a game stopper in my ability to develop as a human being. So I kind of flipped that thought process and decided I'm going to be willing to try anything, and if I don't do it well, that's okay, because the hope is I'm going to continue to get better at it.
Mm-hmm.
So I do want to start with saying, as we learn how to do this, it is kind of stressful. So I noticed that I have a little anxiety, and that kind of slows my thought process down. So again, forgive me, but I'm here to learn. So what we're talking about today is how to find connection when you actually don't trust anyone. Mm-hmm. You've had experiences, usually growing up, where when you shared who you are, such as I'm sad or I'm frustrated or I'm scared, you were basically told, you have nothing to be scared about. Why are you sad? We give you everything you could possibly need. Please just go buck up and hang out in your room until you feel better. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of the lightweight version of we don't want to know who you are. Many people grow up in very violent homes, and I think that's especially true of people that are struggling with addictions. And when your needs are met with violence or your mistakes are met with violence, pretty soon you are just not going to let anyone actually see you or know who you are. In fact, not only that, you will lose touch with who you are, and that happens very, very young. So yeah, getting out there and trying to figure out how to connect is like, dive into the pool and swim when you've never had a swimming lesson. And for many of us, our first attempt with trying to connect is going to therapy or some other group where, the goal of that group is to actually share who you are and where you are and what you're struggling with. No easy task if you actually don't trust anybody.
And group situations are always difficult.
Mm-hmm.
I know you've discussed that you've actually participated in group therapy. And for me, I do more with a one-on-one situation because, again, of my background, there's always that fear of judgment. So sitting in a room with other people and I'm telling my story or talking about my week, somewhere in the back of my mind, I'm wondering if someone's judging me for what I've just shared. And of course, that becomes non-productive when you're looking for a path to healing. So it's always important that when you're looking to start your journey, that you're comfortable. You've got the right people around you and you're in the right setting, because it will be a distraction.
So I thought we would talk about, first of all, trying to find a therapist or some kind of group setting, again, when you don't trust anybody. And for me, that journey was really difficult. In college, the first time I attempted to go to therapy, I went and saw an intern who was a male. He was from a different culture than I was from. And immediately I walked into the room and went, hey, there is no way I'm going to tell this person what is actually going on with me. I was bulimic at the time. I was compulsively smoking. I felt suicidal just kind of on a day-to-day basis. And I looked at this guy and I thought, hell no. But anyway, I still showed up for a few sessions, and the defining moment for me was when he looked at me and he said, well, it's obvious that you have poor self-esteem, so what I want you to start doing is just to say positive things about yourself. And he actually wanted me to do that during the session. He wanted me to say, you know, I'm a good person, I'm important, I matter. And I was absolutely horrified that I was supposed to say these things that I absolutely didn't believe. It was kind of the opposite of being authentic. What I needed to do was say, you know, I'm really struggling, I don't like myself, I don't feel like I'm a good person, and have a conversation about, like, where did that start? And, you know, are there ways that we can begin to change that, but not like suddenly pretend that I was in a good place. And so I remember having that one session and leaving and thinking, hell no, I'm never coming back. And that was my first introduction to therapy, and I didn't go back for a really long time. It was so unfortunate because no one told me, hey, you know, most of the time or often when you first try to find someone to talk to, that first person might not be a good fit. And that isn't because there's something wrong with you, it's because that experience, that, you know, connection wasn't going to happen with this person. And you have to keep looking. But it's so hard when you finally take that huge risk to begin to talk to yourself and you have a talk to another person and you have a bad experience.
You know, so I think my actual first soiree with any type of therapy was a Christian counselor in our youth group, and I come from a very heavy fundamentalist Christian family background. So basically any problem that you had to deal with sin or the devil working through you, or that you were just bad. And I remember it was around the time when I was seriously questioning my faith and being forced to go sit with this much older person, and just feeling like I was being scalded. And, you know, I left out of there feeling guilt is what I felt. I felt no sense of relief whatsoever. What I felt was just absolute guilt that I had been judged and sentenced. So clearly the Christian therapy route wasn't for me, especially since, you know, at that point in my life, I was questioning my faith on almost everything. So if you're in a room with someone who's there to help you and they make you uncomfortable, that should be the first sign you might want to consider a different path.
Yeah, I've talked to clients that have had to go through 2, 3, even 4 different therapists before they found a good fit. And again, oftentimes a therapist will kind of force their views or their beliefs on you, and, you know, the point of therapy is to explore what your own views are and not to be condemned if you are suddenly saying, you know, I don't think I believe the way my faith is supposed to believe. You know, I'm carrying this huge burden of guilt that I don't know what to do with, and that's what you explore. Like, whose guilt is this? You know, where did this guilt come from? How do I let go of guilt that doesn't belong to me? So, you know, I think that the moral of this story is it's not you. If you walk into an office and feel like this isn't a good fit, it's probably just because the therapist is not a good fit, or they're not a good therapist. There's plenty of not, you know, poor therapists, just like in any profession. Some people are really good at what they do and some people are just lousy. And, when you don't know anything about therapy, you just think, this is a waste of time, instead of realizing, no, this particular setting is a waste of time.
And don't forget that you're in charge. So don't feel any type of loyalty because you've sat with 2 sessions with this person that, well, I have to endure, they're the subject matter expert. But if you don't feel okay, speak up. It's like, you know what, I appreciate, the time that we've spent, trying to get to know each other, but I just don't feel like this is a good fit. And if it's a really professional therapist, somebody who is really there with themselves, they'll understand and, possibly give you a reference to someone else that might be a better fit for you. But don't look at it as if you have to endure something that's not taking you where you want to go.
So secondary to that, I want to say therapy is not the answer for everybody. There's a lot of impediments to getting therapy, one of which is, unfortunately, it's still kind of a have-not issue. There's the need for having good insurance. A lot of therapists will only take a few different insurances or no insurance at all, and you have to pay out of pocket. And for someone to have to pay, say, $160 for an individual session, that's their food budget for the week. There's no way that they're going to be able to do that. So, we have to also have the ability to look for no cost or, free types of, ways to find that connection. And there are those kinds of things out there. We have a friend that works for the Northwest Sexual Assault Center, and they offer free therapy for anyone that's experienced a sexual assault, and it's comprehensive, and it isn't short term. I mean, they start out with 3 months, but if they think the person needs more than that, they will continue for as long as that's necessary. And second to that, there's also at this point, mental health is an out there topic. There's all kinds of groups on the internet that work with people that are struggling with addictions. And I think, of course, everyone's heard about the 12-step programs, and there's almost one for everything. There's one gambling, drugs, alcohol, sex, porn, you name it.
Spending.
Oh, yeah. Caring too much about what people think, Codependence Anonymous, or, constantly taking care of other people. There is, an addiction. There is a 12-step program for everybody. And, some people come to me and say, well, I don't like the concept of a higher power. And I always say, higher power is what you make of it. It doesn't have to be God, right? I mean, it is for a lot of people, but you can walk in there and say, my higher power is nature, or my higher power is the group, or my higher power is my connection with my dog. And no one is allowed to say anything about that. It's just the idea that you can't basically do this on your own. You need a connection, again, with something greater than yourself.
And, speaking to that, something that grounds you, that anchors you, that's something that gives you purpose and focus and mostly hope, that can be your higher power. For me, there are days I get off work and I'll go down our hill over to local park that's on the waterfront. It's a lakefront, but it's just being near a large body of water, just looking at the vastness of it and the sounds and the movements. I know a man didn't make that. It's there, it's awesome, and it brings me peace. It's something really simple, doesn't cost me anything. But going back to the issue of cost and things being into reach, in the past 15 years, the flexible spending account that's offered by a lot of employers is one way to go. It will save you money when looking for things like eyeglasses, prescription medications, a massage, and for our purposes, mental health. So don't think because you don't have one of the top tier insurances that you've been basically priced out of the market, so to speak. explore your options. A lot of companies, large companies, to include, local and federal government, do have counseling services available. So make sure you explore your options, so you don't want to add to that burden that you're already feeling that I need to get help, to worry about, can I afford to be helped? So there's always something out there.
So back to the idea of, free support. It's, again, not just 12-step programs. There is programs on the internet that use cognitive behavioral therapy as a, in a group setting to explore how our thoughts are affecting the way we operate in the world. There are secular groups that, again, come together, and the goal is, how do we support each other? But the God word, which for many people is a trigger, is not part of that. Or there's groups based on Eastern thought. So part of the group would be, you walk in and then you meditate for a little while, and then you talk about, what's going on for you, and how to use different tools that maybe don't look like the Western tools to heal whatever it is that you're struggling with. But in my mind, all of these ways of looking at things are about connection, because most addicts don't have safe, loving connections that are allowing them to really be who they are. And secondary to that, they don't even know what that looks like. Because really, by the time we're 2 years old, we've learned to repress the feelings that are not wanted in our families. And that is a really scary concept. I've heard so many times people telling me, in my family, if you cried, you were a wimp and you just needed to get over it, because actually it's offensive to the parents that you're sad. Well, what do you do in your life if you don't know when you're sad? And if you start to feel sad, you think you're a bad person. That is incredibly painful. You will probably reach for some alcohol or any other kind of drug if you can't even know when you're sad and get support. I mean, it's just an incredibly awful bind.
And I think, in one of the billions of conversations that Victoria and I have had, some of the things that our parents' generation would say, how can you be sad? You've got a roof over your head, you've got food in your stomach, you've got clothes on your back, as if those were the only hallmarks of happiness and safety. And, they would make you feel bad. Do you know how hard I worked today when I was on my job to make sure that you had something? What do you really have to be sad about? And so those things really just kept me from sharing what I was feeling, because I was going to be made to feel bad because I didn't have this happy, joy feeling inside of me, to share with them. I was literally struggling, and you just told me I don't have the right to struggle. So it was hard, and it drove a huge wedge between me and my family, because I just felt like an alien. No one understood me.
So once I finally got over my fear, well, actually I was still very, very afraid, but was willing to make the leap into trying to figure out what was going on with me and connect with other people. I ended up kind of doing it all. I went to individual therapy, I had group therapy, I went to a 12-step group, I read constantly about addiction and recovery, and I explored methods for myself that I created as a way of learning who I was and how to express it in the world. And that's really what our podcast is about, is looking at all these different ways that people use to recover. And, it isn't necessarily a set structure that someone is going to hand you and say, just do this. Sometimes you have to explore what works for you and create your own methods. And, I got a lot out of all those experiences, but in the end, oftentimes some of the things that I figured out to do were what helped me recover.
And, those tools that, So here is our timer. So as we talked about earlier, anything worth doing is worth doing shitty. So in our earlier attempts to put together material, we found that we would just talk and talk and talk beyond what we meant to. And so the recordings are set for 30 minutes, so we set timers. So until we learn to sense time between us, we're going to have our little blings and beeps to let us know. So that was telling us that we really need to start condensing what we need to say, because we've got 5 more minutes. And we want to make sure that we say everything in an unrushed manner.
Well, generally, I feel like I don't have that much more to say on this topic, other than, take that impossible risk. I think that's the best way to say it. If you don't believe that who you are is okay, it literally is a leap off a cliff. But if you think about it this way, it's like you're probably living in hell. In my case, I was throwing up every day, smoking cigarettes, I was binge drinking. It was hell. So what did I have to lose? I mean, it was pretty damn hard, but I got off that cliff. And there eventually felt like there was ground underneath me. So I just want to say, I understand that the risk is really, really high, especially depending on where you came from, but it's worth taking that risk.
And, taking a chance, I want to use a different word, a chance to be a better you, a chance to help be a part of your own rescue. It's going to be scary, even talking to somebody you've known your whole life that you trust, to go to them and say, hey, I'm struggling, I need help. It's hard. And we shouldn't, let the difficulty of the situation keep us from doing it. There's been so many anecdotal sayings, President Kennedy, we're not going to the moon because it's easy, we're doing this because it's hard. And what were the scientific payoffs for it? They were huge. So the same thing in your personal life. You put in the work, you stay consistent, and hopefully you'll see results.
As always, I have more to say, but I think it's probably time for us to wrap it up. Yeah. If you ever happen to come to dinner at Michael and Victoria's house, we'll sit and talk for 4 hours and bore the hell out of you. So,
well, no, we're not boring per se. But there's generally more conversation than food. So, but we just enjoy talking. We enjoy sharing. We enjoy each other's company, and we welcome people to join us and bring their life experiences and their stories and their opinions, and most of all, their laughter into our lives. Our world just keeps growing and growing. And as you guys become more familiar with us and become a part of our virtual extended family, we do hope that, at some point you want to connect. And we've included Victoria's email address at the bottom of the screen here again, Vicky, B-I-C-K-I .Rotton, R-O-T-T-O-N, @gmail.com. Or you can look for her professional site at kenmorecounseling.com. And I believe I am done saying what I need to say. So if you're done.
Yeah, I'm done.
Okay. So again, thank you for, searching us and coming back to episode 2. And we look forward to seeing you and hearing from you on episode 3. Thanks again, guys.
Thank you.